Welcome to RLP's accent wall paneling video. I separated these boards by width and length. These are 3 inches in width, these are 5 inches in width, these are 7 inches in width.
Here we go, we're ready to get started. We're getting ready to do our layout on this wall. We have some of the basic tools that we're going to get started with. We of course have our pencil, our safety glasses, tape measure, maybe a chisel if we need to clean up the wall or clean off an edge on some of the paneling. And then we have some wood glue with our boards split. We have our caulking gun with glue. That's going to be primarily what we use to attach the boards to the wall. And if the boards are a little bit cupped or need to be held in place until the glue can cure, we have a pin nail gun and a brad nail gun. Outside we have an air compressor and a saw. So with our basic layout here, the customer wanted us to picture frame this wall. Well, that's very difficult. This particular wall is not flat, plumb, or square. So we're going to start by getting a square side and probably let our wild side end up over here and trim this board to fit after we're done. So every time we start on a corner, we're going to make sure that we get it square to begin with, and then we'll lay out from there. This is going to be fun. Here we go, we have our glue on our first couple boards. We're just going to set them up here, and this will be kind of like a corner block that'll get things started off right. Okay, here we're going and we're doing the bottom row. We want to make sure it's perfectly straight. So what we're doing is we're putting the level on there as a straight edge, using it to tuck the boards up tight to it, and then we're nailing them on. And I'm using the brad nail gun to begin with because I don't like it. Normally it puts too big of heads and nails that I don't like to see, but in this case we want the nails on there good and tight for our starter row. So I'm going to fasten this one on. I already put glue behind it. And one thing I wanted to show you, you can see right here behind this level, is see how much that rocks? This wall is out of flat by an inch. And that's one advantage to this material we're using, this 3/8 thick paneling, because it can conform to the wall. Whereas if you used a thicker board, you wouldn't be able to put it to this wall and it would stick out from the wall quite a ways. So now we have a nice straight row going across here. We've picture framed around it. We're going to show you here in a second what it looks like with the picture frame, and then we can start filling in the field.
I've been framed.
So now we get a chance to show you some do's and don'ts. We have part of our wall installed, a good place to start and work from. And I want to give you some tips on how to efficiently use your material and how to do good layouts. So over here we want to make sure and we stagger our joints completely random. And what that means is make sure that you don't repeat a width and don't be too consistent on your patterns. With this 3-5-7 pattern, just keep it going random. So don't go 5 and 5 and don't go 3-5-7, 3-5-7 because you'll probably run out of one material. Just make sure that when you're about halfway through your wall, you're about halfway through all your widths and so forth. And with us having laid out our piles ahead of time, we can kind of easily pick our lengths and see how much we're using of each size as we're going along. Don't complicate it too much though, it's not near as hard as it sounds. And then it's kind of like laying a wood floor too. You want to avoid some repeatable patterns and you don't want joints too close together. So what that means is here's a joint right here, don't have this one right over the top of it or within about an inch or so of it. Make sure they're offset. Avoid H joints, which there's a joint right here. This one, don't have this one be right over the top of it, so that wouldn't look good. Also, do not avoid stair-step joints. And what that means is here's a joint, here's a joint, here's a joint. Those three are all about evenly spaced apart. That doesn't look so good on the wall. And then also, this one has kind of a big knot hole in it. That would be something that maybe I would want to cut out. It's up to you. That's why we paint the wall flat black ahead of time, is just for that reason. If something like that happened, every once in a while a knot will fall out of a board, or there will be a nail hole too big or something like that. This material is all square cut and defected ahead of time, but every once in a while there's something natural on the board that will show the wall behind it, and it's good to plan for that ahead of time. And then what we're doing over here on the end is, rather than measuring, it's sometimes just faster and easier to mark your boards rather than measure. And I prefer, when I'm grabbing my boards, to have a piece much bigger than I need to cut off, because then the cast off piece is reusable later. So let's think about this. We have maybe a couple dozen rows here. If every row we cut off and wasted 6 to 10 inches of our board, that's going to increase our waste factor considerably. Versus if we have 18 inches here to go and we grab a board that's, say, 30, 40 inches long, we can go mark it, and then the leftover piece can be used later, and it doesn't have to be wasted. So we have that much left over. That's a perfectly good usable board. Whereas if we grabbed one that was closer to this length, it would have been a waste. So for example, right here, if we use this piece, we'd have a pretty small piece left over, which is kind of a waste. But rather, if I go just grab a bigger piece and I mark it, then the leftover piece is completely usable. And then in this case, I happened to find one that was really close to the right length, and because we'd already laid out our stack according to lengths kind of in our stack. So I'm only wasting about 1/8 of an inch there, and that's saw curve, that's completely manageable. We'll show you these after we cut these, we'll glue them up to the wall.
We have glue on our pieces and we're going to put them in the slot. This is the one that had the 1/8 of the inch left on it. Now we're putting this one in. We've already cut this piece the length and we're going to put it in the hole.
And also, when you start a row, it's a good place to use up your pieces that are too short. And so either your cutoffs or other ones that you wouldn't want necessarily in the middle of your wall, it looks better to start a row with them. So this is a short one, a little less than a foot long. So we're just going to start this little row right there, push it in, see how they stay? What you'll find is once you get started, you don't even really have to use nails. We're reaching the end here. We're just marking the last few pieces. So we're up to doing the last row right now. We had to rip it to fit because this was a width other than the 3, 5, or 7 pattern. And then this wall was a little bit, or ceiling was a little bit crooked, so we had to kind of cope it and shave these pieces to fit in there exactly. But they're all done and they're fit, a little bit tight. Take these out, put a little glue on them, pop them back up, and we're almost done. Here's our waste pile after being all done. If you're careful with your cuts, you won't have very much in the way of scraps. So here we go, we're all done.
Yep,
It's
here's
finished.
the wall.
Do you think that farmer, when he built this barn in 1922, thought it would end up as a decorative wall inside?
No. But you said decorative, like this.